Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to just give it a minute or two for everybody to join into the webinar. Okay, thank you for joining us today. We're doing our property owner webinar series, and today's topic is understanding your notice of appraised value. My name is Marya Crigler, and I am the Chief Appraiser of Travis Central Appraisal District. If you have any questions during the process, if you could please just go ahead and type that into the Q&A box. We'll circle back at the end and answer as many questions as we can. But again, use the Q&A box if you have any questions. And again, we'll try to answer all the questions that we get during the presentation. Starting it off, we're going to talk about our notices of appraised value today, because we're getting ready to send out the annual notice of appraised value. Again, appraisal districts are required to appraise property annually and determine the market value of those properties. And then we report those findings to the taxpayers and the taxing units. Our assessment date is January 1st. So we're appraising all properties as of January 1st. And then we start sending out those notices. We start mid-April, and they'll continue to drop in the mail in the coming weeks. The purpose of appraising property at market value is to ensure that each property owner pays their fair share of the tax burden in proportion to the value of their property, so that a person owning a mobile home doesn't pay the same amount as somebody in a mansion. We report the market value of determination, known as the notice of appraised value, and we send those to each taxpayer starting in April. When you receive your notice of appraised value, we always like to tell property owners, do not panic. Changes in your property value may or may not affect your tax bill. They may increase your value, but may not affect your tax bill, because the increases or decreases in your appraised value are not the only determinant of your total tax burden. A lot of that is determined by the budgets that are set by the taxing entities and the tax rates that they set to fulfill those budgets. That budget process happens later in the season. It usually starts around August. And we have a website, travistaxes.com, that can help you see the breakdown. Once that budgeting process starts, that gets updated again every August. Look for that, because again, a very, very large part of what you pay in taxes is depending upon what the budgets and the tax rates that are set by your taxing entities. Finding your notice of appraised value, they'll begin going out in the mail in the next few days. If you don't receive your notice of appraised value, you can go to our website, traviscad.org, to see your 2023 values. They'll be posted. We'll start processing and posting those over the weekend, so they should be up and available on Monday. But again, this is going to be a rolling process. Not everything goes out all at once. As they get printed, we'll post them on the website. So please, if you don't see it immediately, check back in another week or two, but they all should be up on our website by the end of the month. But we will be starting the process starting this weekend. When you receive your notice of appraised value, at the very, very top, and we're going to go through the entire notice of appraised value and explain everything to you. But at the very top of it, you're going to have property information. It'll give you your property ID. One of the key things that we want you to pay attention to on your notice of appraised value is it will give you your e-file PIN. So if you want to e-file or exchange any data or information with us electronically, this is the PIN number that you'll need to set up your account. And again, that's going to be printed on your notice of appraised value. And again, that PIN is really important. That helps you set up your e-file account. Now, if you've previously in previous years set up your e-file account, you don't have to worry about that. You just have to know your username and your password. Usually your username is your email address. And there is an opportunity, if you forgot your password, that it will allow you to reset your password. But if you've never set it up before, that e-file PIN is going to be key information that you need. Before we get into much of the notice of appraised value, I just want to talk about 3 key terms. And they're important for you to understand. They're all related to value assessments that the appraisal district calculates for you, but they are very different. So the first one is market value, and that's what would the property sell for as of January 1st. We're trying to determine what is the market value, what would that property sell for. That number is not limited. It is reflective of what we have seen happen in the market in the previous year. The second value information that you're going to get on your notice is going to be the assessed value. If you look on our website, it'll be listed as the net appraised, but that is the reduced value of your property after a homestead limitation calculation. So if you have a homestead on your property, you'll have a different value that will be your assessed value. And then finally, you'll have your taxable value, which is your value after any exemptions. And the taxable value is the value that is used to calculate your property taxes. So it's really important that you understand those 3 key terms and the differences between those terms. So on the notice of appraised value at the very top, you'll see the property information. Just below that, you're going to see a breakdown of your market and assessed values and some more information about your exemptions and your taxable values. And we'll talk about each of these a little bit more in detail. So on your market and assessed value, you're going to see what your market value is, and that's going to be on the left-hand side. In this case, this property also has a homestead, so they get a limitation as well. But the market value is going to be on the left side. And again, market value is the one that is reflective of what's happening in the market. There is no limit on how much the market value will go up or go down. So it's what your property would sell for as of January 1st. We're looking at sales that occurred in the previous year to make our determination of what the market value would be for your property. Again, it's set fresh every year as of January 1st. There's no limit on the increase or decrease of the market value. And the market value reflects what is indicated by the current real estate market. What are other properties in your neighborhood or your area selling for? To the right of the market value is the assessed value. And that's the one that you have if you have a homestead limitation. Now, again, you get a homestead limitation if you are claiming a homestead on your property. So not all properties, not all residential properties will have that limitation. It's only if you're claiming your homestead exemption on the property. And again, your assessed value is your net appraised, and it's a reduced value after your homestead limitation calculation. Now, only properties with a homestead have that. And the first year that you qualify for your homestead sets your base value. So you don't, again, your first year is your base value, and then that limitation is calculated each year thereafter. It is a state mandated calculation that is done each year. And the calculation is your assessed value, last year's assessed value, plus 10%, or the current market value, whichever is lower. So we had substantial increases in values last year. Most property owners have a substantial differential between their market value and their assessed value. So for most people, it will be last year's assessed value plus 10%. But there are pockets in the county where we've seen depressed sales, and there may be a few property owners that might see their current market value be their assessed value. But again, it is a state mandated calculation. It's done each year. And it's last year's assessed value plus 10% or the current market value. So here's an example of a property that has the limitation. In 2021, the market value was $318,541. And the assessed value for that property was last year's assessed value plus 10% was $316,000. So the lower of the two is the assessed value plus, and that became the current year's assessed value, $316,000. In 2022, the market value of that property went up to $440,088. But the calculation of last year's assessed value plus 10% was $347,600. So the assessed plus is the current assessed value for that property. In 2023, you'll notice that the market value of this property actually went down. But when you look at the assessed value plus 10%, that was $382,360. That is still the lower of the two. So $382,360 is the assessed value for this property. The next key term that we'll go into a little more detail is the taxable value. And that's the value after exemptions. And this is what the taxing office used to calculate how much you need to pay in property taxes. So below your market and assessed value, there's going to be a breakdown for you. It'll show all of your exemptions, what your 2022 exemption was and what your 2023 exemption is. Each taxing entity can choose exemptions. There are local option exemptions, with the exception of school districts, which have state mandated exemptions. School districts can layer on a local option on top of that, but they do have specific state mandated exemptions that they must grant to all homestead property owners. But for the other taxing entities, it is a local option for them about how much they're going to grant in terms of exemptions. And because there is a difference with what amount of exemption each taxing entity grants, that means that your taxable value could be different for each of your taxing entities. So the assessed value minus any exemptions is the taxable value for the taxing unit. Again, we don't use market value to calculate that taxable. We'll use the assessed value. So if you have any assessed value limitation, it is that value that is used minus the value of any exemptions that you have for your property, and that is your taxable value. Again, taxable value can be different for each taxing entity because each taxing entity gets to decide if they will grant exemptions, and if so, how much. So in Travis County, our big taxing jurisdictions are going to be your school districts. We've got your city, the county, and the Austin Community College. So for Austin ISD, it is state mandated that they must grant $40,000 in a homestead exemption. For Austin ISD, it is state mandated that they must grant $10,000 in an over 65, and Austin ISD grants an additional $25,000 as a local option for over 65. So for Austin ISD, an over 65 exemption is $35,000. For Travis County, it is local option. They get to choose. For the homestead, they grant a 20% exemption, which is the maximum amount that they can grant for a homestead exemption. And then for the over 65, they get to set the dollar amount that they're going to grant for over 65, and they set their over 65 exemption at $110,000. City of Austin, again, it is something that is local option. They have granted the 20% homestead local option. And then for the over 65, they're granting $113,000. And then finally, Austin Community College, again, another that is local option. They grant a 1% homestead exemption and a $75,000 over 65 exemption. It's worth noting that in Travis County, school districts must give a tax ceiling, but Austin Community College is a local jurisdiction that has also opted to grant a tax ceiling for those property owners that are over 65 or older. So in our example, we'll just look at Travis County and do that calculation for you so that you can see how that actually works. So the first calculation is we're going to take the assessed value and multiply that by 20%, which is the homestead amount. So that's $76,472. We're going to add $110,000 for the over 65 exemption, which gives you a total exemption amount of $186,472. So your assessed value of $382,360 minus all of your exemptions, $186,472, gives you a taxable value for that taxing entity of $195,888. And I had mentioned earlier that Austin Community College and Austin ISD are two of our jurisdictions that grant that tax ceiling. So that's under your free ceilings. So that is the amount of taxes that you will pay for that jurisdiction. When a tax ceiling is set, that becomes the maximum amount of taxes that you will pay to that taxing entity moving forward. Your tax amount may go below that amount, but will never go above that tax ceiling. And there's going to be an explanation of your tax ceiling in the notice of appraised value. There are some exceptions of your tax ceiling when it will be recalculated. And that is if you add any new improvements, if you add another story to your house, you add more rooms to your house, that's considered new value that gets added into your tax ceiling. But otherwise, your tax ceiling is set at the time that you qualify for the over 65 or disabled persons exemption. Also in the notice of appraised value will be a breakdown of the previous year's values and the proposed 2023 values. And again, this is going to show you the market value, your assessed value, and any homestead cap, which the homestead cap is just the difference between your market value and your assessed value. It'll also display for you any exemptions that you may qualify for. There will be a blurb on your notice of appraised value informing you about that Truth in Taxation website. Again, tax rates that get set play a really important role in the amount of taxes that you pay, but that process doesn't start until August 7th. So you can go to our website, travistaxes.com, or you can go to the texas.gov website. It's texas.gov/property taxes, and you'll find a link that'll take you directly to our Travis Taxes website. Again, on that website, it's going to give you really key information that you'll need about which taxing units you're in, what have they proposed as their tax rates, what is their no new revenue rate, which is the tax rate that we give them the same amount of revenue as they got in the previous year. And then finally, it'll tell you when are their budget hearings and their tax rate hearings so that you can participate in that side of the process as well. You can also, from that website, give feedback to your taxing entities about what kind of services that you would like and where you would like to see them start saving some money and consequently maybe save you some taxes. So that is all available on the texas.gov/property taxes website, or you can go directly to it from travistaxes.com. The notice will also include protest instructions. So if you believe that your property's market value is not correct, you can file a protest of the market value. For most property owners, the deadline to file the protest will be May 15th. However, if your notice of appraised value gets sent in the mail a little bit later, your protest deadline may shift to a later date. So it's really important to pay attention to this deadline that you're given in your notice of appraised value. Again, for most property owners, it's May 15th, but your deadline may be a little bit later. It is at least 30 days after your notice is mailed to you. So if your notice is mailed a little bit later, you may have a slightly later date. There will also be information about exemptions in your notice of appraised value. If you have not filed for your homestead and you think that you are qualified, the deadline to apply is Monday, May 1st. You can go to our website and submit your application online. And we highly recommend that because the online process kind of takes you through it step by step and make sure that you're including all of the documents that you need to get your exemption granted. So we encourage you to do it online. It's a faster, more efficient way to do it. But you can also submit a paper application for your homestead if you prefer. It'll also include a notice of protest in your notice of appraised value. So you can complete that notice of protest. Again, the deadline is May 15th or 30 days after your notice is mailed to you. And the notice will include what your protest deadline is in that notice packet that you get. We do, again, encourage property owners to file your protest online as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Another piece of information that you will get in your notice of appraised value is a pamphlet that is produced by the comptroller, and it is all about the taxpayer rights and remedies. Again, that information is produced by the comptroller and will be included in with your notice of appraised value. And then finally, we'll include for you a kind of a roadmap about the protest process that just kind of takes you through the process and what the deadlines or the dates that you would need to meet in order to do it. So it'll explain to you filing your protest deadline, having an informal meeting, attending your formal hearing. Again, you can resolve your protest at any point during the process. But if you don't resolve it after an informal meeting, you still have an option of going before a formal appraisal review board. We'll have another webinar about the formal protest process. We encourage property owners that want to file a protest to file their protest online. Again, you can go to our website, www.traviscad.org, and put in your information. Again, that PIN number that we talked about at the very beginning is really important if you need to set up your user account. If you already have a user account, then you can just go ahead and immediately start filing your protest. It gives you, if you file your protest, the benefits of filing your protest online is you're going to get immediate confirmation of filing. With some of the issues that we've heard of and seen with the delays in the mail being stolen out of the mailboxes, this is one of the more secure ways that you've got to get your protest filed with the appraisal district and get confirmation that you did file it timely. You can also easily upload and review the evidence. So if you e-file, we will put into the portal electronically for you any evidence that we have on your property so that you can see the evidence in advance of meeting or talking with an appraiser. It also gives you an opportunity to upload any evidence or information that you would want the appraiser to review before you guys talk. You'll also be able to review and accept settlement offers. So we'll make an initial offer based on anything that you submit. That's before you'll do your informal meeting. But it's possible after the informal meeting that there may be a second. You might provide more information, or your testimony might provide more context, and there could be another offer that is made to you on the portal. But again, the benefit of e-filing is it's going to be the quickest, the easiest way, and you will get confirmation that it was filed timely. If you want to do an informal meeting, you can go to our website, again, traviscad.org, and there's a page, Get in Line Online. It'll allow you to get in line for your informal meeting. You can choose a date that is most convenient for you and schedule a date and time. So you've got that option, or you can get in line for same day. I have to say that if you get in line for same day, you're going to be in the queue with a lot of other people. Priority will be given to property owners that's scheduled for a specific time. When you schedule yourself for your informal meeting, you will give us your phone number and we will give you a call at your informal time. So we'll call you when your informal meeting is scheduled. But again, most timely informal meetings will happen if you schedule them in advance, but you can get in line online for the same day. Again, there could be substantial wait because priority will be given to those people with scheduled appointments. That is everything with the Notice of Appraised Value. We'll be doing another webinar for you May 3rd, and that one is going to be all about the 2023 protest process. So we'll go into more detail about filing your protest, what to expect, what kind of information or documentation that you may need to provide at your formal hearings. We've already done a webinar on exemptions. So if you have any questions about exemptions, we again encourage you to go to our website. You can go to traviscad.org/webinars. Each webinar that we do record and post on our website. So this webinar as well will be recorded and posted on the website and available for reviewing, or if you need to refer a friend to view that, it's going to be available on our website. So I will answer some questions that we've got. The first question was, I got my new home after the deadline for protest passed and was not able to protest it, and we paid the taxes on a very high amount. Can we do anything now so that we can get a tax refund? Okay. So the protest deadline is very firm. If the previous owner had filed a protest, you could have stepped in their shoes as the new owner. But if a timely protest was not filed, there's not an opportunity to go back in and get a timely protest on the property. If you felt that it was a substantial error, some possibility, but the deadline for filing a substantial error request also applies in that case. I would say for 2023, make sure that you watch for your notice of appraised value. If you still feel that the amount that you paid is less than the market value that we've determined, submit your protest, file it online. And if you want to include a copy of your settlement statement as proof of what you paid for your property, appraiser will review that, and there's a possibility that they may make you an offer, and that may be resolved pretty easily. The next question is, the state legislature may change to a 5% cap on all values. If this cap goes into effect this year, will TCAD adjust retroactively? Yes, there's a couple things going on at the legislature. Again, they don't send die until May 31st, so we don't know what bills will or will not pass. It really depends on the effective date that the legislature sets for that bill. So if they set an effective date that makes it retroactive, then we will go in and apply it retroactively. Typically, the legislature will set it with an effective date for the next tax year. There is, I know there is some bills in the Senate that would increase homestead exemption amount. It would increase the school district homestead exemption from 40,000 to 70,000. It would increase the over 65 from 10,000 to 30,000. Again, those bills all have to be passed by the legislature, and they would all require a constitutional amendment, which means it has to go before the voters and the voters have to approve it. Usually those constitutional amendment and votes happen in the November election date. But again, if the effective date of any of the legislation makes it retroactive, then we would go in and update our records appropriately. The next question is, I applied for a homestead exemption for the first time since I purchased a property last year. Do I get the 40,000 exemption on the market value? And what about the 10% max increase? That's a really good question. And we do have a webinar about understanding your homestead limitation. So in your case, you are a brand new homeowner, you applied for your exemption for the first time. The law allows you to claim your homestead exemption effective of the date that you acquire the property and it becomes your principal place of residence. So if you purchased it in June, you can start getting that exemption. However, that exemption is prorated for the portion of the year that you owned it. So if you only owned it for half of the year, you get half of that exemption amount for the first year. The following January 1st, you would get that full exemption amount. For the 10% limitation, the first January 1st that you own the property becomes your base year. So if you purchase the property in June of 2022, January 1st of 2023 becomes your base year. That is the first year, that is your base value. And then your calculation of the limitation gets calculated every year thereafter. So you'll start seeing the benefit of that 10% limitation starting in 2024, 2025, and future. And that is all of the questions that we've had, and our time is just about up. Again, I appreciate you guys visiting us and joining us for that. Oh, I've got one more question that came in. We'll try to fit this one in. How does the appraisal board handle market value calculation? Is the value calculated based on January 1st? However, you noted in the past year, sales are used during this calculation, as the Austin market was much stronger in early 2022 than in late 2022. Do you take this into consideration when calculating the appraised values? Yes, we did notice a specific change in our market in Austin. We noticed that in the May and June timeframe, the market seemed to start trending downward. So when we looked at our appraisal models, we did focus on sales that occurred in the third and fourth quarter of the year, and put more weight on those sales than we would have on sales that occurred earlier in the year. So we are taking that into consideration. Again, our goal is to appraise property as of January 1st. But again, if you feel that our market value determination is incorrect and you have additional information, you can certainly provide that information to the appraisal district as part of your protest. Again, I advise you to file your protest online and then submit any additional information that you've got so that we can review that before we talk to you. And one last question we have is, do we have to sell our property in Houston first before we can apply for the exemption in Austin? So you can only claim one homestead exemption, only one in the entire state, in the entire nation. You may only claim one. So if you are claiming a homestead on another property, you cannot file an application and claim a homestead on another property. So yes, you would first have to notify your appraisal district in Houston that you no longer are qualified for that exemption before you could apply for that in another place. Now, the homestead exemption is not something that is transferable. So as of January 1st, if you qualified for the exemption January 1st of that year, that exemption remains in place for the entirety of that year. And then you can make the request till it gets removed for the subsequent years. So it's really important to keep the appraisal districts up to date about any changes in your property and your property status so that we can make updates to our records as quickly as possible. All right, that was all the questions that we have time for, and I really appreciate your time. Again, we'll be doing another webinar for you guys, and that will be on May 3rd, and it'll be all about the protest process. And again, this is going to be recorded and posted on our website, so feel free to go back and rewatch it again. Again, thank you very much. Bye-bye.